No longer will I hear the word decaf used as a smear. The reason we all say death before decaf is because the old processes for decaffeinating coffee really did just destroy the beans at the same time. You see, the old decaf process was discovered by accident. In 1903, merchant coffee trader Ludwig Roselius received a shipment of coffee beans and was livid to discover they had been completely soaked with salt water during transit. The raw beans had turned from the grassy green they should have been to a darker, musty greenish brown. But Roselius was not ready to just take the loss from those beans and dried them out before attempting to roast them. To his surprise, the coffee didn't taste all that bad and somehow didn't keep him awake all night. The salt water had decaffeinated the coffee. So Roselius and his team tried to replicate the process, using steam from salt water to make it easier to pull out the caffeine, which eventually they succeeded in doing with the chemical benzene, which was much faster and reduced the caffeine content a lot more than just, accidentally leaving the coffee to soak in salt water for weeks on end. Now, they don't use benzene anymore as it's pretty damn toxic, but the principle is still applied in many different decaffeination processes. You see, caffeine is water soluble, so using water to extract the caffeine makes a lot of sense. The only problem is that obviously the things that make coffee taste nice when mixed with water are also water soluble. So that's why for all these years we've been accepting that decaf should just taste bad, and you're giving up the taste to have better sleep and for your health. Although the health thing isn't necessarily true, and I've been planning a video about this in the future, so let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. Processes like Swiss water and ethyl acetate are much more commonly used now. And while they can taste really nice, they are very different from caffeinated processes in terms of flavor. Rather than talk about what these processes do, I'll leave links in the description to videos explaining them more fully, because I want to get to the point, and that is the new CR3 carbon dioxide decaffeinating process. I met Sebastian from CR3 at the coffee trade show SCAJ in Tokyo, and he explained their very cool new process for decaffeinating coffee without, dousing the beans in acid or whatever. Their process is gentle and keeps the beans much more intact, which you can see even in the roasted beans. Very, very different looking from other decaf beans. I don't have any green beans. Unfortunately, the company don't have any spare to send me because of the big decaf experiment with James Hoffmann promoting the Decaf project. So the beans are all tied up with local roasters around the world. So I bought 3 different sets of decaf tasters, and I'll leave a link to the project and to the roasters I have here in the description. I got this one from Square Mile Roasters, which is co-owned by James Hoffmann himself, so I expect that will be the more mainstream tasting experience. And then I bought these ones from 19 Gram Roasters based in Berlin, as they had them available to purchase before Daddy Hoff released his first video about the decaf experiment. Then I got these ones from a local roaster in London called Calm Coffee Roasters to see how they might roast it differently in smaller batches. I also got the chance to chat with the roasters at Calm in London to ask them how they approached roasting this bean differently from standard coffees and also other decaf processes.
Interestingly, the CR3 actually had a higher density than the original coffee, which was really quite a surprise to me. And it also had a higher moisture content than the original coffee. Compared to the other decafs, it was definitely denser, and it had a higher moisture than the Swiss water process, but slightly less moisture than the ethyl acetate.
That's really interesting because usually decaf processes tend to have a lot less density because there's so much being taken out of the bean, right? With the whether it's ethyl acetate or it's Swiss water process.
Yes.
So it's interesting to hear that the density has actually increased.
It's possibly due to the really high pressures they're using during the decaffeination process. That was, when I watched James's videos, I think that was the most interesting thing that stood out, the fact that it's under such high pressure for such a long time. So I think maybe that's kind of most of the reason why that density is kind of maintained.
So how do you change your approach to roasting for this new process?
So it was basically about using a bit more energy compared to the other decaffeinated coffees. So sort of through the middle part of the roast, I used higher energy. And then by the time you get to the development time, it's just about being careful to reduce that energy just enough so the momentum is maintained, but enough so you can get a long enough development time to really develop the flavors we're looking for.
So here's how I'll taste it. First, I'm going to do a cupping of all of these sets. I'm pretty good at dialing in for espresso, but I only have 50 grams of each bean, which means I'll only have about 2 shots to get it perfect, which I think is unlikely to reliably happen. 60 grams. Not 50, 60. But I will do espresso with the ones from 19 grams because I bought 1 kilo of this to make sure that paying for all that extra shipping would not be a total waste of money. So I think I can probably dial that in before I run out. Probably. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so this is the first one I'm trying from Square Mile. I don't know which one is which. I've mixed them all up and put the labels on the bottom of each cup so I can check later. I'm gonna go ahead and say that this one has the strongest aroma. This one has almost like a, I don't want to say mustiness, but it smells a little bit different, a little bit off. It's like a weird tart sweetness to it, like an avocado, like a mushy avocado or something. This one's definitely the strongest aroma. And it's very sweet and very high in body. This one is very, very clean. Okay, number 3. Feels to me like it's got a lot higher acidity than the other ones. More acidity in that one. Clean, fruity, a little bit sweet, but not a sort of bold sweetness like you might get from a low altitude Brazilian coffee or something like that. Okay, number 4. This one has a lot less overall boldness of flavor. The acidity's not there. Definitely a little bit more body. It's not very clean tasting. This one is definitely less flavorful than the others. So I'm gonna rank order them. I'm gonna put this one at the top. This is my favorite one. This is my least favorite one. I really like these two. They're like second and third, I guess, but very, very close together. And then this one is definitely my least favorite. So, moment of truth. This one is the CO2 process. Fittingly, the caffeine was my favorite one. That's very interesting. Let's try the same thing with the Calm Coffee Roasters one and see if there's any difference there. It's got a little bit of funk to it, but I think this is probably the ethyl acetate. That's definitely the most flavorful one. Very sweet, rich body, very balanced, good clarity. That one's really good. I'm guessing this is the caffeinated one. That one's nice too, a little bit milder. I would say that the flavor isn't quite as punchy as the other ones. That's very sweet, it's got great body, it's got kind of nice acidity, and like that sort of apple-like acidity rather than lemons. I would rank them, probably this is my favorite one, then this one, then this one, then that one, I think. So I'm gonna guess that this is caffeinated, CR3, Swiss water process, and then ethyl acetate. Let me just take a look under here. Yep, that's the caffeinated one. This one's the CR3, and that's the Swiss water process. Right, so I could taste the difference between the processes because the processes accent different things in the coffee. So the ethyl acetate tends to have a little bit more funkiness, a little bit more like unusual flavor to it. It's like a fermented kind of taste. It's not strong, but it's there, you can taste it. Swiss water process tends to have a little bit less of that punchy flavor because the water pulls so many of the coffee solubles out as well. I'm quite impressed that the CR3 has been consistently the second best behind the caffeinated one in both of my tests. So that is a fantastic espresso, and since we're using the same beans for all of the different decaffeinating processes, it'll be really interesting to see what changes in terms of especially body and acidity when it comes to these new processing methods. The CR3 decaf actually requires a lot finer grind size to get the same timing. So the caffeinated one is 4.3 and the CR3 decaf is 3.65. That is a massive difference in grind size. This often happens with decaf. Like I said before in previous videos, decaffeinated coffee tends to have much lower structural integrity, so you do need to grind finer to get the same kind of extraction from it. Okay, so this is number 2. This one is the CR3 decaf. It's about 3 seconds slower than the caffeinated one was, but I think that's about as close as I'm gonna get. Wow. It definitely doesn't have as much body as the caffeinated one, but it has this really vibrant sweetness that's really, really nice. There's no sourness at all. A little bit of very light acidity. It's much lighter than the acidity of the other one. So I feel like for the Swiss water process, there's a lot more sweetness and a lot more acidity coming through. It definitely tastes a lot more acidic, and not sour, I mean acidic. Okay, number 4, this is the ethyl acetate process decaf, and usually ethyl acetate tastes a little bit sweeter, but let's give it a go. You can see the beans are very different from the Swiss water process. They're much more intact. Yeah, 25 seconds. So that's pretty close. That's about 2 seconds faster than the caffeinated and Swiss water processes, so let's give that a try. That's actually really good. Very balanced cup, definitely very sweet, more body than the Swiss water process for sure. And it doesn't have that kind of astringency that you get often from decaf process coffees that kind of leaves that sort of lingering, almost like metallic taste in your mouth. This one doesn't have that at all. For me, this new process is a massive innovation that can't be understated. I know a lot of people who can't have all that much caffeine for health reasons, and I've seen posts from coffee lovers even selling their espresso setups and giving up the hobby because their doctor said to reduce their amount of caffeine. So having a process like this that keeps the flavor and the body while removing the caffeine, I mean, I think that's amazing. Now, I have been obsessing over the health benefits of coffee for the last few years, and at some point I'm planning on having a deep dive video into the health impacts of coffee on this channel. So subscribe to see that when it comes out. Thank you so much for watching, you wonderfully overcaffeinated people, and I'll see you on the next one.